She was no longer just a princess. She was a mother protecting the future. Birds flew between the spires and children played in the gardens. For centuries, her family had ruled this world with wisdom and care. Alara had always felt safe here, surrounded by people who loved her and a home that seemed unshakable. But in the quiet moments, she sometimes felt the weight of her title pressing down on her like a shadow she could not escape. Her son, Kale, slept quietly in her arms, wrapped in soft, woven blankets. He was barely 6 months old, but already Alara could see a spark in his eyes, a curiosity and determination that reminded her of herself. She had always dreamed of raising him in peace, teaching him kindness, and showing him the beauty of their world. Yet as she watched the horizon, a dark feeling grew in her chest, as though something she could not name was moving toward them. The sky suddenly darkened. At first, she thought it was a cloud passing overhead, but then a shadow blocked the sunlight entirely. The ground trembled beneath her feet and a deep, terrifying hum filled the air. Alara's heart froze as she saw the shapes in the sky ships, enormous and alien, descending from orbit. Their forms were sharp and metallic, glowing with an eerie light, and their movements were coordinated, almost alive. The palace alarms blared, a shrill cry that echoed through the halls. Servants and guards rushed past Alara, their faces pale with fear. She clutched Kale tighter, feeling the tiny weight of his body, and realized that nothing would ever feel safe again. "Mother," a voice called. It was Commander Rail, her father's most trusted advisor. He appeared at her side, his armor scratched and smudged from the sudden chaos. "The Zitrians have arrived. They are attacking the palace. You must leave, take Kale and survive. That is your duty now." Alara's eyes widened. The Zitrians. She had heard the stories, legends whispered in fear among the colonies. They were relentless, intelligent, and cruel. Entire cities had fallen before their attacks. The thought of them entering her home, of them reaching Kale, made her stomach turn. She nodded, swallowing her fear, and followed Rail through the corridors of the palace. The halls were no longer familiar. Flames licked the walls where the invaders had landed, and the screams of the wounded echoed through the air. Alara's hand trembled as she clutched Kale, but her mind worked quickly. She remembered the hidden escape pod beneath the eastern wing, a small vessel designed for emergencies. Only she knew its exact location. She led Rail and a few remaining guards there, her heart pounding in time with the distant explosions. As they reached the pod, Rail turned to her. "This is not just about survival," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "There is a message you must have. It is in the pod, encrypted. It may hold the key to humanity's future. Do not ignore it." Alara took the small data crystal he handed her and placed it safely in her robe. "I won't," she whispered. She looked down at Kale and felt a fierce, protective surge inside her. She was no longer a princess who could watch from the palace and issue orders. She was a mother, and her child's life depended on her courage and decisions. The pod launched just as the palace walls were breached. Alara pressed Kale close, feeling the vibrations of the engines beneath her feet. Outside, she saw the palace burning, the sky filled with the alien ship's strange lights. She did not look away. She would remember this day not as a victim but as the beginning of her fight. Hours passed in tense silence as the pod drifted through space. Alara watched the stars, each one a pinprick of hope and danger. She had to make choices now that could change everything. Supplies were limited, and she had no allies she could fully trust. She whispered to Kale, even though he could not understand, "We will survive, we will be strong, and we will protect what matters most." She accessed the encrypted message from her father. The screen flickered, revealing a holographic projection of him. His face was tired, but his eyes burned with determination. "Alara, if you are seeing this, it means the Zitrians have breached the palace. Kale carries within him a genetic key, a code hidden for generations. It is vital to humanity's survival. Protect him. Trust no one fully." Even those who seem kind may have their own goals. Your courage will shape the future." The image shimmered and disappeared, leaving Alara alone with the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Days passed as she navigated the pod through uncharted sectors. The isolation was heavy, but she refused to let despair take hold. She studied star charts, calculated trajectories, and planned for potential threats. Kale grew slightly every day, and Alara learned to read his subtle signals, to soothe him when the loneliness of space made him restless. She became attuned not just to him, but to the hum of the pod, the rhythm of life and survival. One evening, as she adjusted the pod's course near an asteroid field, a faint signal appeared on the communicator. It was weak and fragmented, almost impossible to decipher. Alara leaned closer, her heart hammering. Whoever it was, they were searching for her and Kale. Could they be a friend, someone sent by her father to help? Or were they a threat, another danger in the vast emptiness of space? Alara made a decision. She would respond, but cautiously. Her fingers moved over the controls, sending a simple message. "I am not alone." "Who are you?" The reply came almost immediately, almost too quick to be real. "I can help. Trust only what you see. Heading to your coordinates." Alara's heart raced. She could not afford mistakes. She prepared Kale for potential danger, ensuring he was secure and calm. Every sense was heightened, every sound amplified in the quiet pod. The unknown approached, and she could only hope her instincts and her courage would guide them through. That night, as Kale slept in her arms, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of the palace, of the life she had lost in a matter of hours. She thought of her people, of those who had fallen, and of the impossible responsibility now resting on her shoulders. And yet, even in the darkness, she felt a spark of something stronger than fear. It was determination. She would not just survive, she would fight. She would protect Kale and through him the future of humanity itself. Alara drifted off to sleep, Kale against her chest, listening to the hum of the pod. Somewhere in the distance, the signal continued to pulse, guiding them toward an uncertain destination. And in the heart of the Princess Stern mother, a seed of strength was growing, a promise that she would endure, no matter what the universe threw at them. When Alara awoke, the pod's sensors showed a small planet ahead. She squinted at the screens, trying to decipher what it was. The planet was remote, uninhabited on first glance, but it offered shelter, water, and resources, enough to survive for now. She prepared the pod for landing, careful, precise, as if every small movement could mean life or death. As the pod descended, she felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. They were alive, yes, but the universe had made it clear that safety was temporary, fragile. Alara's hand rested on Kale's tiny shoulder. "This is only the beginning," she whispered. "The beginning of a fight we cannot ignore." The pod touched down softly on the surface. Alara opened the hatch and looked out at a barren but promising world. Rocks scattered across a sandy landscape, with mountains rising in the distance and the faint glow of distant rivers. It was lonely. It was dangerous. But it was a chance. A chance to survive, to learn, and to prepare for the battles to come. Alara stepped out, Kale secure in her arms. The wind was dry, carrying the scent of unknown minerals and distant rain. She surveyed the land, every sense alert. She was no longer a princess safe in a palace. She was a mother in a strange, empty world, responsible for the future of her child and perhaps the survival of all humanity. The signal pulsed again, faint but insistent. Someone was out there somewhere and they were coming. Alara tightened her grip on Kale, feeling the warmth of his small body against her own. She would meet whoever approached, ready to test her courage, her intelligence, and her resolve. She would not fail, because she was no longer just a princess. She was a mother protecting the future, and nothing, not even the stars themselves, would stop her. The small planet stretched out under a pale sun, its jagged mountains and rolling plains giving Alara a sense of cautious hope. She had spent the night tending to Kale, keeping him warm and safe in a makeshift shelter she built from the pod's emergency supplies. Her eyes had not left the horizon. Somewhere out there, the signal was coming closer. She did not know who or what awaited them, but she knew she had to be ready for anything. As morning light crept over the horizon, Alara stepped outside, Kale in her arms. She scanned the landscape with careful eyes. The ground was barren in some areas, but there were signs of water in the distance, a faint glimmer of a river cutting through rocks. That could be their lifeline. The wind carried a strange, dry scent, and the ground beneath her feet felt solid, offering the first sense of stability she had felt since leaving the palace. The communicator crackled to life. A voice, rough and unfamiliar, spoke. "You have landed, I see you." Alara stiffened. "Who are you?" she demanded, keeping her voice calm though her pulse raced. There was a pause, then the voice replied, "Name's Joran, I can help. But I do not trust anyone lightly, and neither should you. Keep your child close, move carefully." Alara's grip on Kale tightened instinctively. "How do I know I can trust you?" she asked, though a part of her hoped she could. Trust had been a luxury she had never needed before, and now it felt like a fragile thread in a storm. "You don't," Joran admitted. "But right now enemies are coming, and alone you will not survive." She nodded. She did not like it, but she had no other choice. Survival was the priority. Slowly, she moved toward the coordinates he had sent, keeping Kale hidden under a makeshift cloth. The landscape was quiet, deceptively calm, as if the planet itself held its breath. A figure emerged from a ridge ahead, silhouetted against the sunlight. Joran's tall, muscular frame carried the ease of someone who had survived countless battles. His armor was scratched and worn, evidence of past conflicts, and his eyes scanned constantly, sharp and calculating. "You must be Alara," he said, voice low and wary, "and this must be Kale." He gave a small nod toward the infant but did not step closer. Alara kept her hand over Kale protectively. "Yes," she said, "and you are Joran, you said you could help us." "I can," he replied. "But first you must understand this world and the universe we live in. The Zitrians are not just invaders, they are hunters and they are intelligent. They can read technology, intercept signals, and coordinate in ways humans cannot yet imagine. If they know Kale is here, they will not stop until they have him." Alara's heart tightened. "Then what do we do?" Joran studied the horizon, then gestured toward a small valley. "We hide. And we fight smart, not like soldiers in a palace with weapons and walls. We fight like humans do best, using ingenuity, patience, and surprise." Over the next few hours, Alara learned that Joran was not exaggerating. The Zitrian scouts had already found traces of her pod, and one of their smaller ships hovered in the sky above. Joran had brought a small cache of equipment, enough for them to make temporary defenses. Alara listened carefully as he explained the strategy. It was risky, but it relied on human creativity rather than brute force. That was something she could grasp and use. Alara spent the day preparing. She made simple traps from rocks and the pod's spare parts. She studied the terrain, finding vantage points and hiding places. Kale was kept close, wrapped tightly in her arms, and she learned to soothe him while keeping watch. Every sound made her heart race, but she focused on breathing, on staying calm. Fear would be dangerous. She had to be clever. As the sun dipped below the mountains, they saw movement. A small Zitrian scout ship had landed near the river. Its metallic limbs scraped against the rocks, its sensors scanning the area. Alara felt a shiver, but she did not panic. She had an idea. She whispered her plan to Joran, who nodded reluctantly, clearly impressed with her quick thinking. That night, under the dim light of a crescent moon, they executed the plan. Alara and Joran moved silently, using shadows and rocks to stay hidden. Alara's hands were steady as she guided Kale, whispering quietly to keep him calm. The traps were set, and the environment itself became a weapon. When the Zitrians approached the river, they triggered a series of rocks and pulleys that sent them tumbling, disoriented and slowed. Alara watched from a ridge, her heart pounding. The Zitrians recovered quickly, their movements precise and terrifying, but the delay gave humans a crucial advantage. Using clever tactics and their understanding of the terrain, they managed to push the scout ship back, forcing it to retreat temporarily. It was not a victory, but it was enough to buy time. Afterward, Alara and Joran returned to their temporary shelter. She held Kale close, feeling the warmth of his small body against her own. She looked at Joran, who had shed his stern expression for a rare moment of approval. "You are clever," he said. "Most humans would panic in the face of that. You think ahead, protect your child, and use your brain instead of brute force. That is what keeps humans alive when everything else seems lost." Alara nodded, exhausted but proud. "I have no choice," she said softly. "Kale is my future and the future of many others. I will do whatever it takes to protect him." Days passed, and they worked to fortify their position. Alara learned quickly, observing Joran's methods and improvising her own strategies. She set up warning systems with mirrors and sensors, learned to use rocks and debris as makeshift weapons, and discovered a surprising skill for thinking 2 steps ahead of the enemy. Kale, though young, seemed to sense her determination. He became calm in her presence, trusting her in a way that made her heart swell with pride. One evening, as they rested, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Alara jumped to her feet, clutching Kale, her eyes scanning the darkness. "The Zitrians," she whispered. Joran moved beside her, weapon drawn. The air was filled with a strange hum, a sound that set every nerve on edge. From the shadows, a Zitrian scout emerged, its metallic body glinting in the moonlight. Alara's mind raced. She could not fight it directly. But she remembered a tactic from the palace archives, a method of using the environment itself against intruders. She whispered instructions to Joran, and they moved quickly. Together, they led the scout toward a narrow ravine, where they had rigged a simple trap with rocks and tension wires. The scout hesitated, sensing danger, but it was too late. The trap activated, sending rocks tumbling down and knocking the creature off balance. It scrambled to recover, but Alara's quick thinking allowed Joran to disable it. For the first time, she realized the truth of what Joran had said. Humans could win not by power, but by ingenuity. As they returned to their shelter, Alara allowed herself a brief moment of relief. "We did it," she said quietly, kissing Kale's forehead. "We are still here, and we will keep going." But there was no time to relax. The Zitrians were persistent. Each encounter taught Alara more about their enemies, their intelligence, their patterns, and their weaknesses. She realized that Kale's genetic key, hinted at by her father, might be the only thing capable of turning the tide of this war. Protecting him was no longer just a personal duty. It was a mission that could shape the fate of humanity itself. Over the next few weeks, Alara and Joran moved carefully between hidden valleys and rocky outcrops, gathering information and preparing for larger attacks. The planet became a classroom, teaching Alara lessons in patience, strategy, and endurance. She discovered an unexpected strength within herself, a combination of maternal instinct and sharp intellect that allowed her to survive and adapt in ways she had never imagined. Kale grew as well, responding to her guidance and presence. His eyes seemed to hold a quiet intelligence, a calm awareness of the dangers around him. Alara could not help but wonder if her father's words were true, if there really was something extraordinary within him. One night, as they sat beside a small fire, Alara looked at the stars and thought of the palace she had lost. She thought of the people who had died, and the weight of responsibility pressed on her once again. Yet she did not falter. "We will survive," she whispered to Kale. "We will be strong, and one day we will return not just for us but for everyone who needs hope." Joran watched her, impressed by her resolve. "You are no ordinary human," he said softly. "Most would break under this pressure, but you are shaping the future already." Alara smiled faintly. "I have no choice," she replied, "and neither does Kale, but together we are stronger than they know." The communicator crackled again, faint and intermittent, signaling that the universe still had eyes on them. Someone or something was approaching. Alara tightened her grip on Kale, feeling the familiar surge of determination. She would face whatever came next. She had to, because she was no longer just a princess. She was a mother, a protector, and the first line of defense for the future of humanity. And she would not fail. Alara woke to the first light of dawn filtering through the jagged rocks that surrounded their temporary shelter. Kale stirred in her arms, yawning and stretching, his small fingers curling instinctively around her hand. She kissed the top of his head and studied the horizon. The distant mountains seemed peaceful now, but she knew the calm was only temporary. The Zitrians were relentless. They would find them if given the chance. Joran was already awake, scanning the area with a handheld device that emitted soft pulses of light across the ground. He had spent the night monitoring for signs of movement, preparing for attacks that could come without warning. Alara admired his vigilance. She had learned much from him, but now she felt ready to take a larger role, not just following orders but planning and making decisions herself. The weight of Kale's life and the future of humanity rested on her. After a brief meal of ration supplies, Alara retrieved the encrypted data crystal her father had left. It was small and unassuming, but she felt its importance keenly. She placed it in the pod's console and began the decryption process. The screen flickered and an image appeared, a map of the nearby sector with coordinates highlighted in a strange pattern. There were also notes in her father's hand, detailing a secret location, a desolate moon far from human colonies. "This is it," Alara whispered to Joran, who leaned over her shoulder. "The message mentioned Kale's genetic key. It seems it's tied to this moon, something that could help us fight the Zitrians." Joran studied the map, his brow furrowed. "It's far and dangerous. Zitrians patrol these sectors constantly. Traveling there without detection will be difficult, maybe impossible." Alara nodded. "I know, but we have no choice. We cannot fight them head-on without understanding what my father meant. Kale is the key. If we can reach the moon and uncover its secrets, humanity has a chance." They spent the next hours planning the journey. Alara's mind raced with possibilities and contingencies. She calculated routes, factoring in asteroid belts, rogue satellites, and potential Zitrian patrols. She also thought about Kale. His safety was paramount. Every decision had to consider him. Every plan had to balance survival with urgency. By midday, they prepared the pod for launch. Alara secured Kale in a protective harness, checking the life support systems twice. Joran loaded supplies and weapons into the cargo hold, his movements precise and practiced. The small craft, designed for stealth and efficiency rather than speed, shivered under the power of its engines as it lifted off. As they exited the planet's atmosphere, the stars stretched into long trails, the vastness of space reminding Alara of how small and fragile they were. But she refused to feel powerless. She was no longer just a princess. She was a mother, a strategist, and a protector. And she would do whatever it took to ensure Kale's survival and the survival of the human race. The journey was long and tense. They navigated through asteroid fields, each rock a potential hazard. Alara's hands were steady at the controls, her eyes never leaving the path ahead. She learned to anticipate the pod's movements, to adjust quickly to sudden shifts in gravity or debris. Kale slept most of the time, his small face peaceful against her chest. His presence was both a comfort and a reminder of the stakes. Days into the journey, their sensors picked up an anomaly, another ship approaching. Alara froze, calculating possibilities. It could be Zitrians, it could be humans, but who could she trust? She activated the stealth protocols, reducing their energy signatures and blending with the surrounding darkness. The ship passed without noticing them, and Alara exhaled slowly. Joran gave her a small nod of approval. Good work. That could have been the end of us. Night cycles passed, and they finally approached the coordinates marked on the encrypted map. A small, barren moon hung in the void, gray and lifeless, except for faint structures partially buried in dust. Alara's heart raced. She felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. This place held the answers, the tools they needed to turn the tide against the Zitrians. They landed carefully, and Alara stepped onto the moon's surface with Kale in her arms. The ground was cold and dusty. Strange wind patterns stirred fine particles, making the air almost invisible in the dim light. The ruins they had seen from orbit were even more mysterious up close, towers and walls, worn with age, etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly when touched by their lights. Joran moved beside her, weapon at the ready. "We are not alone here," he whispered. "Something is watching." Alara scanned the area, her mind racing. She had no illusions that the moon would be simple or safe. Her father's message had hinted at challenges, puzzles, and defenses designed to test not strength but intelligence. This was a human-made system, ancient and sophisticated, and Kale's role in it would be central. They explored carefully, avoiding triggers and scanning for hazards. Alara's analytical mind came alive as she deciphered the first of several locks, mechanisms that required precise timing, pattern recognition, and logic. Each success gave her confidence. She realized that her role was not only to protect Kale physically, but to navigate these ancient technologies and ensure that they were ready to unlock the weapon her father had hidden. As they progressed deeper into the ruins, a low hum began to resonate through the ground. Alara felt it in her bones. The structures seemed alive, responding to their presence. She paused, holding Kale tightly. "Joran, we need to be careful. Every step could trigger something we do not understand." Hours passed as they solved puzzle after puzzle, each more complex than the last. Kale stirred occasionally, sensing the tension and importance of the moment. Alara whispered to him softly, her words comforting and steadying, even though he could not yet understand. She felt an invisible bond forming, a connection between them that went beyond survival. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the ruins. The walls were etched with symbols that pulsed faintly with light. At the center stood a pedestal, and on it a small device that seemed to respond to Kale's presence. Alara's breath caught. Her father had been right. Kale's genetic code, his DNA, was the key. As she approached, the device activated, scanning Kale and enveloping the chamber in a soft, blue glow. The symbols on the walls shifted, aligning in patterns that created an energy field. Alara watched in awe as ancient technology, designed centuries ago, recognized the child and responded. But before she could fully comprehend the magnitude of what was happening, the ground trembled violently. Alara grabbed Kale, pulling him close as dust and debris fell from the ceiling. The Zitrians had arrived. Somehow, they had tracked them to this hidden moon. Joran fired at the intruders, but there were too many. The aliens advanced with precision, using technology Alara had never seen, scanning and coordinating with terrifying efficiency. She realized that fighting them head-on was impossible. Survival would require cleverness, deception, and the tools the ruins provided. Alara's mind raced. She studied the symbols on the walls and noticed that they responded not only to Kale but to movement and sound. She whispered a plan to Joran, who hesitated only a moment before nodding. Together, they used the ruins to their advantage. Alara manipulated the energy fields, creating illusions and barriers that confused the Zitrians. Rocks and ancient mechanisms triggered traps that slowed their progress. Every action was calculated, every movement deliberate. The battle was intense, but Alara's ingenuity gave them the upper hand. The Zitrians, advanced though they were, struggled against the combination of ancient human technology and human cunning. Joran fought valiantly, protecting Kale while Alara activated the final mechanism. A pulse of energy surged through the chamber, stunning the invaders and temporarily disabling their communications and weapons. For a moment, there was silence. Alara held Kale, her chest heaving with exhaustion and relief. She looked at Joran, who gave a small, impressed nod. "You did it," he said quietly. "You turned the tide, even if just for a moment. Humans have always been underestimated, and you've proven why." Alara kissed Kale's forehead, feeling the warmth of his small body and the hope that he represented. She realized that survival was not enough. They needed to understand and harness what the ruins offered. Kale's presence was central, his genetic code unlocking tools humanity had forgotten, tools that could give them an edge against the Zitrians. As night fell over the desolate moon, Alara stood watch, Kale in her arms. The Zitrians had retreated for now, but she knew they would return, more determined than ever. The challenge was far from over. She would need to train, to plan, and to prepare for battles that would test every ounce of her courage and intellect. She looked at the stars above, feeling both fear and determination. She thought of the palace she had lost, of the people who depended on her, and of the child she held. "We will survive," she whispered, "and we will turn the universe's expectations against them. They have underestimated humans for too long. They will learn, through Kale and through me, that humanity cannot be broken." And as Kale slept peacefully against her chest, Alara felt a deep, unshakable truth settle within her. She was no longer just a princess. She was a mother, a protector, and a strategist capable of guiding humanity toward a future even the Zitrians could not imagine. The battles ahead would be hard, but for the first time, Alara felt ready. She had a purpose beyond survival. She had hope, and she had her son. Together, they could face anything. The moon lay silent under the pale glow of distant stars, its gray surface almost serene after the chaos of the previous day. Alara stood at the edge of the chamber where Kale's genetic key had activated the ancient human device. Her eyes followed the glowing symbols etched into the walls, pulsing with energy that seemed almost alive. She felt a mixture of awe and urgency. The Zitrians would not wait. They would return with greater force, determined to claim the child and whatever power the ruins contained. Kale stirred in her arms, his small fingers curling around hers. Alara felt a surge of protective instinct. She had trained herself to stay calm, to think clearly under pressure, but there was no hiding from the raw fear she felt for her son. He was the key to humanity's survival, and she would not let anything happen to him. Not now, not ever. Joran paced nearby, his eyes scanning every shadow. "They won't wait long," he said quietly. "We need to finish activating this device and prepare defenses immediately." Alara nodded, her mind moving rapidly. She had learned to interpret the symbols, to follow the patterns of energy that the ruins responded to. It was delicate work. One wrong move could deactivate the system or trigger defenses that would endanger them. She took a deep breath and placed Kale gently on a padded surface nearby, keeping her hand close in case he stirred or needed her. The chamber began to vibrate as Alara completed the final sequence of activations. The symbols glowed brighter, projecting a holographic map of nearby systems. Streams of light connected stars and planets, showing routes and locations that had been hidden for centuries. At the center, a larger projection emerged, a schematic of an enormous human weapon, long thought lost to history. Alara's heart raced. This was it. The tool her father had mentioned, the weapon that could turn the Zitrians' hive mind against themselves. Joran leaned over, studying the projection. "It's incredible," he said. "Human technology, this was kept secret for centuries. If we can activate it, the Zitrians won't know what hit them." Alara nodded. "We have no choice. Kale's DNA is the key, but I have to be precise. One mistake and it could backfire." She placed her hands near the interface, feeling the energy respond to her presence and to Kale's unique genetic code. The room hummed with power, and a faint warmth spread through her body. For a moment, she allowed herself a small smile. All the struggles, all the fear, all the sacrifices, they had led to this moment. Then the ground shook violently. Alara's chest tightened. Through the chamber walls she could sense the Zitrians approaching. Their scouts had returned, and this time they brought reinforcements. She grabbed Kale, holding him tight against her chest, and whispered, "Stay calm. We are ready." The first Zitrian soldiers entered the chamber, their metallic bodies glinting in the pulsing light. They moved with precision, scanning for the source of the activation. Alara took a step forward, positioning herself strategically. She knew that their strength was in coordination, not in individual power. If she could disrupt their signals and create confusion, she could gain the advantage. She activated the weapon. A pulse of energy surged through the chamber, reacting to Kale's genetic code. The symbols on the walls shifted, creating barriers and illusions that distorted the Zitrians' perception. The aliens hesitated, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. Alara's strategy was working. Joran fired with precision, targeting their weak points while avoiding Kale's safe zone. Alara continued to manipulate the energy fields, creating barriers that redirected the Zitrians' attacks. Every movement was calculated, every second critical. The chamber became a battlefield where intelligence and ingenuity outweighed brute force. The Zitrians adapted quickly, learning from their mistakes. Alara realized that they needed more than clever defenses. They needed to turn the weapon against the hive mind itself. She concentrated, guiding the energy pulses through Kale's genetic interface, focusing on the patterns that her father had hinted at in his message. The device responded, projecting streams of information directly into her mind. She saw the connections between Zitrian communication networks, their coordination points, and their weaknesses. It was a delicate balance. Too much energy in one area could overload the system, harming Kale or damaging the chamber. Too little and the Zitrians would regain control. Alara adjusted constantly, trusting her instincts and her understanding of human ingenuity. She had never felt more alive, more focused, more determined. The Zitrians advanced again, but Alara was ready. She directed the energy in a precise pattern, creating a wave that disrupted their hive mind. The aliens froze, their movements stuttering as they struggled to maintain control. The humans had gained the advantage. Kale's presence amplified the device, and the pulse of energy spread beyond the chamber, reaching the Zitrians' command networks. Alara felt a surge of hope. This was the turning point. Humanity had always been underestimated, and now, for the first time, the Zitrians were vulnerable to something they could not control: the ingenuity, resilience, and adaptability of humans. The battle was far from over. The Zitrians began to recover, but the humans had prepared. Alara and Joran coordinated a series of attacks using the chamber's technology, forcing the aliens into traps and confusion. Every victory was small but significant. Alara felt her confidence growing, her role as a mother and a protector intertwined with her emerging identity as a leader and strategist. Kale's cries filled the chamber briefly, and Alara immediately picked him up, soothing him while maintaining her focus on the battlefield. The bond between mother and child was unbreakable, a source of strength that Alara drew upon. She realized that humanity's strength was not just in technology, but in the love, courage, and determination that drove them to protect one another. Hours passed in tense combat. The Zitrians' numbers dwindled, their coordination broken by the human device and Alara's strategic use of it. Finally, the last of the attackers retreated, disappearing into the void of space. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the ancient device and the steady breathing of Kale in her arms. Alara allowed herself to relax slightly, though she remained vigilant. The weapon had worked, and humanity had won this battle, but the war was far from over. She looked at Joran, who had a rare smile on his face, a mix of admiration and relief. "You've done something incredible," he said. "No one expected humans to fight like this. No one expected you to fight like this." Alara smiled faintly, her gaze returning to Kale. "We did it together," she said. "And this is only the beginning. Kale is the future, and we will protect it." They spent the following days consolidating their position on the moon, studying the ancient human device and learning how to use it more effectively. Alara realized that Kale's genetic key could be a weapon not just against the Zitrians, but a tool for humanity to reclaim lost colonies and secure their place in the galaxy. Every discovery brought new hope, and every challenge strengthened her resolve. As they prepared to leave the moon, Alara looked at the stars. She thought of the palace she had lost, of the people who had died, and of the countless humans who depended on her courage and determination. The weight of responsibility pressed on her, but she did not falter. She had faced fear, loss, and overwhelming odds, and emerged stronger. She had discovered a power within herself and within humanity that could not be ignored. Kale gurgled softly in her arms, and Alara kissed his forehead. "The universe has underestimated us for too long," she whispered. "But now they will see. Humans are clever, resilient, and unyielding, and we will protect our future no matter the cost." Joran prepared the pod for departure, and Alara guided them carefully through the moon's surface, ensuring that Kale remained safe. As they launched into space, Alara felt a profound sense of purpose. She was no longer just a princess. She was a mother, a warrior, and the keeper of humanity's hope. Every challenge they had faced, every danger they had overcome, had led to this moment. And now they would carry that hope into the stars. The journey back to human colonies would be long and fraught with danger, but Alara was ready. She had learned to adapt, to think ahead, and to fight with intelligence and courage. She had discovered that the true strength of humanity was not in weapons or technology alone, but in their ingenuity, resilience, and the bonds that connected them. As the stars stretched into trails of light outside the pod, Alara held Kale close. She thought of the future, of the colonies they would protect, of the people who would survive because of their actions, and of the battles yet to come. She felt a deep, unshakable certainty. No matter the odds, humanity would endure. And as Kale's eyes met hers, shining with innocence and potential, Alara understood the truth her father had always known. The future was not written. It was shaped by those brave enough to protect it, those clever enough to fight for it, and those who would never give up. She whispered softly, "We have survived, Kale, and together we will shape a future they never imagined." The pod sailed into the darkness of space, carrying with it the promise of hope, the strength of human ingenuity, and the determination of a mother who had discovered that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. Alara was no longer just a princess. She was the protector of humanity, the mother of the future, and a force that no enemy could ever truly defeat. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Alara smiled with certainty. The universe would remember humanity. And it would remember the mother who had fought, against all odds, to protect its future. She was no longer just a princess. She was a mother protecting the future.